I created the loop. Yeah. I just, I sent him a bunch of loops, and he's got the other guy places it and creates just drums, because their outlook is like, oh, who should get the higher percentage, because one person made the melody and the other person only did drums. That's their outlook on it. I don't think of that, like, that's the wrong way to think about it, in my opinion.
Let's be honest, you're not gonna find these videos anywhere else. Why? Because I make them. So it would really help me out if you subscribe. If you've already subscribed, what also really helps is if you like the video and leave a comment. It's hard in the era of clickbait videos on YouTube and negativity in the producer community, and I appreciate your support. Thank you so much. So when you started making beats initially, were you focusing more on placements and making albums, or you started around the time when the online beat licensing space was pretty strong. So were you doing all of that, or what was your focus?
I mean, the goal was to get placements. I just never had those, I never had those connections.
See, that's why that mute button is useful.
Yeah, I could have hit the cough button. I never had those connections, and I didn't really know how to get those industry connects, right? So that was always the goal, is like, I wish I can get a placement. I really want to play major industry placement, but I never did. So the goal was to really just work with as many local people as possible, and that's what I did. I would link up with local artists. I had my band at that time. I was creating like side projects with other artists that I liked. Like, for instance, like one person was a client, and I would sell him beats, and I would book him studio time, and I realized, like, I think we really would connect on some music and really vibe well together on music that we make together. So from a client just came like an actual 50-50 project where we worked on it together, and it ended up doing really well for me at the time as an independent artist producer. Definitely like my best project that I've probably ever put out myself, and it came from finding somebody in the studio, linking up, seeing that there was some sort of chemistry there, and just kind of worked together on an EP and pushed it. And it was in like the beginning, or like right in the middle of the SoundCloud days, where SoundCloud was really popping.
So here's a question to build off of that. Stay Golden wants to know how you built up your studio client base. Especially, and I'm curious because this was all going down in Rhode Island, right? You don't think of Rhode Island as this major hub in terms of music. I mean, I know Master H went to school there. I know Sage Francis is from there, but like, that's two people.
It's definitely not a major hub. I look at Providence like a smaller Boston, and Boston's like a smaller New York, right? So we're on the tail end of cities, but it is just like those other cities, just really small. So there is a music scene here, and back when I first started out, it was pretty strong, honestly, in multiple genres. In metal, rock, with my band, and in hip hop, I would just go to a ton of shows. So this is when there was a lot of shows happening. I would show up at a lot of different shows. Sometimes I was involved with the shows too, because I had that side project that I was telling you about where I worked with that artist, and we would go and get booked at a lot of local shows too. And they would find out like, oh, Larry, you mixed so-and-so, you recorded so-and-so. Yeah. Let me get your number. It was just kind of a word of mouth thing. People would start just knowing me because they would hear other people's music and wonder where they got it mixed. They liked the mixes. They heard that there was something good and original about them, and they were wanting to know who mixed it and who engineered it. And I would show up and show face at shows. I would get hit up online and social media and Instagram and stuff, but a lot of those clients came from being in person at shows. It really helped. It really helped. I think just they see you, they hear about you, and then, or they see you online and maybe they forget to hit you up, but when they see you at a show, it's kind of different. And I know with COVID and everything, shows are starting to come back. And I think the scene is about to have like a really huge breakthrough because shows have been dead for so long. So I don't know, I could be wrong, but just if you're looking to get some clientele, whether it's artists to get on your beats, artists that you want to mix, record, master, like I think just going out to shows is a huge part of it still. Social media presence is big. Honestly, obviously, you can connect with anybody in the world, But if you want like a studio in-person clientele, I think that's the way to do it.
How did you learn to mix and engineer? Was that all self-taught, or did you have any kind of formal education, internship, anything like that?
I didn't have any internships, any sort of formal education. It was all self-taught, YouTube, pretty much YouTube, being around other engineers locally. I learned a lot from another engineer that I had. He just kind of hired me on. He's like, oh, you want to, because he knew that I was starting to engineer, and he was a videographer as well. So this is when this is actually when I first quit my job, my part-time job. And I said, you know what, I think I'm going to take this leap. He needed help in his studio, and he was going to pay me like $10 an hour to engineer them, to not really mix, but just engineer. So I got to learn a new DAW. I learned Logic, and I learned a lot from him just watching and sitting around his studio sessions, and then just watching him mix, because I was already there engineering the sessions. So then when it came time to mix, I would just watch him, and I would take some of those techniques. I would take what I learned on YouTube, and I would just like put it all into one big thing, and kind of use all those tricks that I've learned from other people and other people online. Really just self-taught, but not at the same time self-taught, because you're learning from other people, right?
Well, I was going to say, you know, there's really not much in terms of, well, certainly not in terms of formal education for people who engineer with FL. So you learned on multiple platforms and still ended up going. I want to talk more about that later, but you learned Logic. You probably learned Pro Tools to an extent.
A little bit,
but you stuck with FL for all of your production and engineering.
I used Cubase for a long time when FL wasn't as good. So I went into that studio. I learned Logic, and I had to use it in his studio. But then when I started booking more of my own clients, FL wasn't that great at recording like it is now. It's on another level now. It's totally different for recording. But then it was like, I got to use something that's Windows friendly. Cubase was that. So I recorded everything into Cubase.
Yeah, some people still make beats with Cubase.
Yeah, it's good.
So at what point in your career did music become the job that paid the bills for you, when you were able to finally quit the part-time job at the gas station? And what do you think was really the turning point for you that set you over the edge into being a full-time career musician?
I honestly, like I explained a little bit earlier, but like, I think around the time that I quit the band, well, that everybody kind of quit the band, right? We went our separate ways. And I realized, you know, like, I had one kid at the time. I have 3 now. So it was, you know, you get that feeling when you have a kid, like, you really gotta step things up. And that was the time that I had to really step things up. So it had a lot to do with that, being in the band and leaving the band. That had a lot to do with it. And I just realized that I really just got to step it up. If I want to do music full time, if I want to do any of this full time and not work a regular job, I have to really step it up, because I felt like I knew a decent amount at the time to do music full time. And I had the engineering thing going for me, which I was already making some side money on, not much, but enough to pay some bills. And I knew that if I stepped it up, I could do pretty well with it. So it was around that time. Around that time.
What would you say the most important change you made in your life, or the most important habit you developed, was that allowed you to elevate your work to that point?
So a year or a year and a half into me leaving the band, probably like a year later, I really got on a strict kind of 9 to 5 schedule. Once I did that, I feel like everything changed. I don't know if it was a coincidence, or if I just had everything in order, or if everything was just building up to that point. But right when I changed my schedule, shortly after that, I think things really started to take off online. And I just started to see things even more clearly and a little bit differently. And I really even stepped it up even more, because along my career as a producer and a musician, and you see these little, and a lot of us do too, we see these like little bits of potential. Like you get or assurance that we have that potential to go full time, to have a successful career. So along my career, I kept seeing those little things. So those kept me going and going and going. But then I, you know, throughout my life, I just made these like little changes, and there was these things that would just motivate me to go extra hard. Having a kid was one of them. Leaving that job was another one. Leaving the band was another one. So those little things, they pushed me a little bit.
What about days where you just weren't motivated? How did you push yourself through that?
There's not a lot, to be honest. I don't know. There's some times where I just feel like I don't feel like doing much. I don't know if it's not like I get depressed or I'm not going to go anywhere with it. I always had it in my mind, like, I know, like, I'm going to do this. I was always pretty much all the time in that tunnel vision, and nothing was really going to stop me. I had multiple conversations with people about how this is it. It's like, there's no way I'm doing anything else. I just convinced myself that this is the only thing I'm going to do. Something in music is going to be what I do full time. And that could be engineering. It could be owning a studio. It could be making beats, selling beats online. I was working. Sometimes I would go to shows and work the door for my friend that was a promoter. So just in any way, I just tried to figure out something that could make me money in any way in music that I like to do, that I could stand doing. And I just really never had a lot of those days where I felt like it wasn't going to work out. I might have had some days where I just was kind of feeling lazy and didn't feel like doing anything that day, but I think that's good and healthy to have sometimes too, where you don't just don't do anything regarding music that day. Do something else that takes you out of it and come back to it.
So would you say location matters for you? Because you've managed to do a lot out of what you would yourself characterize as kind of a smaller market.
I think it definitely did years ago, right? 10, 15 years ago, location was everything. Like everything, location was everything. Location definitely helped me a little bit too. Because if I was in somewhere else outside of the city, half an hour, 45 minutes away from the city, I probably wouldn't have gotten the start that I did studio wise. It would have been tougher. So it definitely helped then. But right now, it depends what you want to do too. It really depends what you want to do. So if you want to own a studio and you want to have people physically coming into your studio and working with them, recording them, mixing them, producing with them, then I think location matters. But if you want to sell beats, get placements, you don't even have to rent a studio space. You could just chill in an extra room in your house, your bedroom. It really doesn't matter anymore. You could be anywhere, literally anywhere in the world.
Let's talk about that quick, because you just built a studio shed, right?
Yes, this is it right here. Yeah, it's a temporary.
Oh, you're in it?
Yep, I'm in it.
Wait, what do you mean it's temporary?
It's temporary because I'm going to be getting a house soon, and I'm going to probably build another shed, honestly. So I left my studio that I was in for like 10 years. I'd always been in a studio because I was with the band. So we had a studio, and then the band decided we needed to move. We moved to another studio, and then we were in that studio for like 7 years. And then once the band stopped, I took the rent over myself, and I stayed there. And that was another motivational factor too, because I was like, yeah, I gotta make sure I pay this rent, so I need to really step things up. So there's a whole bunch of different factors. But side note, yeah. So now, once I left that studio in April of 2021, I was like, yeah, I just want to like build out the inside of this shed in the backyard and just kind of cook up in there, because I don't need a lot of space. I don't need to pay that rent right now. And it was just kind of like, I need to change things up a little bit too, because I've been in there for so long.
Okay. I was under the assumption that you own the property you built the shed on.
This is the property that I built the shed on. The shed was already built in the backyard, and it just wasn't done on the inside. The studio that I had prior to this was like a rental spot that I had close to downtown in Providence, and this one is in our backyard. So
okay,
I'm gonna, now that I did this with this shed, it just like changed my outlook, because a lot of people say, I just want to like build a studio in the house. I have 3 kids and it gets super noisy, so I like being away from the house. I don't want to even be in the basement with them running upstairs. So the next house we get right now, we're looking for a new house. And I know for a fact I'm going to be building another shed from scratch, bigger than this, because this one was already built. And just doing the whole inside, it's just, I don't know, it's the best decision I ever made, honestly, studio wise.
Trailer, but yeah, full of kiddies, right? Bufo. I think that opens the floodgates on ideas, studio ideas, because they sell like tiny houses and stuff you can buy, and
you could literally have one shipped like from Home Depot or Lowe's or any of those. And there's a lot of other companies that make full on sheds that you could that's almost like a tiny house, like you said. You could have it shipped and just kind of plopped in your yard. You wouldn't really have to build it, just finish the inside. And it's cool because you can feel like you're leaving the house a little bit, and
yeah, especially I don't have kids or a family or anything. I'm just totally alone all the time in the dark. But with someone who does have family, you do kind of want to get away from the noise. And especially, I think this is good advice to people, because I talk to a lot of people, and tell me if this was your experience, where if they've quit their jobs, right, and they're treating their music career as a 9-to-5, but they're doing it all from home, their environment doesn't provide much motivation for them, because they associate home with relaxation, not with work.
Yep. That's why I felt like I've always needed to go somewhere. So that's why I felt like I could have in the past done things out of my house. But I think what really kept me in that certain headspace, like you said, was having another place to go. And that's why I won't build something in my house. And I know that's not the case for a lot of people. Sometimes you don't have that choice or opportunity, right? Because maybe you don't have the space, budget, whatever. There's, many factors. Big enough yard to do something like that in, or maybe you can't rent a space somewhere else. But it definitely plays a huge factor in everything mental, because I always felt like I had to go somewhere else to do what I do, to work on beats, work on music, book clients, think of ideas, strategies. It's always, like you said, you associate home with relaxation, and you could get caught real quick and just being like really extra lazy when it's work time, because you're at home. You're like, oh, I'm at home. I have all the time in the world to do all this stuff. I'll do it all tomorrow. Right. You can get into that mindset real quick.
And at home, you got snacks and TV and all types of things.
Yep.
See, distractions. I just don't have I don't have cable, so I'm good. So let's talk about beat making. You just produced a track for KSO James with TM88.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that. How'd you link with TM88?
Man, social media. I think that at some point he started just like watching my FL videos, and we linked in a DM one day and just started chatting. And from there, he was just like, yo, let's work. We got to work. So I was like, all right, dope, man. I was like, I got a ton of loops that I can send you. So I was just sending him melody loops that I created, and he got a bunch. And then, and this is probably like a year and a half. I've been talking on and off here and there just through social media, probably like a year and a half with him, just chopping it up, funny DMs maybe here and there, or just, kind of shooting it. And then he hit me up and he's like, yo, I got this song with KSO James with one of your loops. He's like, check it out. And that's pretty much how it happened. Pretty simple. It just, that relationship started just through Instagram.
Yeah, that beat sounds amazing. What's your take? This is a big conversation, and I don't think it has to be a negative conversation. Mm-hmm. What's your take on the whole sample maker, loop maker split conversation?
I've just recently saw a bunch of people talking about it. I know that it's a big topic of conversation. A lot of people, what's like the main thing? Is the main thing that people are saying loop creators should get 50, it should be always 50-50 down the middle?
Some people are saying, I think what it is there are two main camps. One is let's split it down the middle 50-50. The other is let's give whoever placed the beat the majority share.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of agree. And I was watching that interview with Palace. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah, I think that's what really producer grind is always causing conversations Even conversations that have been going on for but these are conversations that need to happen.
Yeah, for sure. 100%, bro. I agree with Palace on that. I created the loop. Yeah. I just, I sent him a bunch of loops, and he's got the other guy places it and creates just drums. Cause their outlook is like, oh, who should get the higher percentage? Because, one person made the melody and the other person only did drums. That's their outlook on it. I don't think of that. Like, that's the wrong way to think about it, in my opinion. They didn't only do drums. They got it placed, especially if they got it placed. They added drums. He got the artist on it. He has the relationship with that artist. He met with them in the studio. They recorded it together, or they were talking about it back and forth together, however they worked it out. So if that record gets placed, I think the higher percentage should definitely go to that person. Versus
I don't like the whole, I'm glad you brought this up. I don't like phrasing anything as somebody only doing blank. You only made the melody, you only made the drums, you only placed the record, you only made the beat. Because we hear, as producers, when a rapper says, why do you want writer's share? You only made the beat. That triggers us. So why would we do it to each other?
Exactly. It's kind of, it's hypocritical, and it happens way too much. Way too much. I see it all the time. Like, I don't get that mentality of only creating something. Like, it takes multiple people to create something dope.
Yeah, and my no one asked me. My personal feeling is that, like, if someone wants to give me 50 splits, if I make the sample, great. It's not something that I will fight you to the death on.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If you want it to be 30, like
30-70.
30-70. You can tell I didn't get a degree in anything mathematical or science related. If it's 70-30, it's 70-30,
Yeah.
So that's,
I'm not going to fight. Like, I'm happy to just be making music with guys like that, and just making music in general. No matter who it is, I'm just happy to be making music. Do we want to get paid? Of course we do. But for the sake of saving relationships, keeping them healthy and strong, and creating more opportunities in the long run, and just doing what everybody thinks is fair. Like, I just think that that's fair if that's the case. I'm not going to fight anybody on that.
Yeah, I think fairness is a pretty wide range of options. Mm-hmm. And I think if we're married to one option over another, then that's when we end up fighting and getting contentious. So switching gears, your drum mixes always sound amazing. I mean, when you only make drums, right? What would you say is the key to mixing drums in FL? So not only they knock, but they still sound clean.
I know some people don't like this, but just getting good samples to begin with, like just getting samples that really just cut through. If you're making your melodies first, you have melodies first. Like, what I do a lot of times is I'll just drag any old samples in. Most of the time, it's just to get things done really quick, because I think a lot of us just work for speed. We just want to get the ideas out as fast as possible. Then I'll go through and maybe fish through some more kicks. I think another big thing is kicks have that tail on them, and they have that tone in them. So tuning them is a huge part of getting a clean mix. And it's not really mixing. It's a part of mixing in a sense, but making sure that your drums are tuned. So whatever your root note is, make sure that kick is hitting that root note. It's going to sound way better. And just kind of fish through. If it doesn't sound good in that root note, maybe go up a couple of keys. And then if it doesn't sound good there, I usually go to a different sample that cuts through and sounds good right away. And that's pretty much it, man. Leveling, I don't do a whole lot of technical mixing on my drums anymore. I used to, because I used to create a lot of EDM stuff, and that entailed like a lot of mixing and a lot of effects and on everything. But the longer I do it, the more I see of how good these samples are that are coming out, and the less that you have to do to them when you just drop them in, tune them up, find something that cuts through, level it, and I'm pretty much good. I might sidechain a kick and an 808 here and there, but it's pretty much it.
What are some of your go-to drum kits? I know you have some drum kits out, so I assume those
I have a couple, good. Yeah. I really like the one that Cody just dropped. It was like a free one. I can't remember the exact name of it. I could probably look it up. I got FL open right now. I think it's called the Essentials 2022.
Oh, that's already out. I got the 2021 one. I use that
bro.
all the time.
The so clean, bro. The sounds in that kit are so clean. I have a lot of my stuff open. There's a Cymatics one that is like one of my go-tos, and it's called Cobra. If I want like really punchy trap drums, I go to this one every time, and it's probably like 2 or 3 years old, and it's still just cuts through every single time. If I'm looking for some lo-fi stuff, I go to the l.dre drum kit. He's got a bunch of really dope drum kits. Chew, Prod by Chew. He's got a really good kit. There's just like some kits that I just have my go-tos, and I go through phases where I'll just use that one. I don't know if you do this too, but I'll find like a drum kit that I like. And I'll use it for like 5 months straight, and it's only that kit for like 5 months.
And then it's weird because like after that 5-month period, something changes, and you just don't want anything to do with that.
And
kit
you never
anymore.
touch it, and you never touch it again.
Yeah.
I know it, but that Cobra kit that I said I go back to every now and then. That's one kit. Sometimes you have that one that you might go back to every now and then. For the last couple of years, I've been going back and forth to that. But right now, I'm using that Cody kit in like every beat that I make. Right now, it's like every single beat that I go to, I'm using that one.
Yeah, it's easy to find. Everyone just Google CXDY. That's how he spells his name.
I think he got it. I think he put it in his Discord channel. I think that was how you're supposed to get it.
Okay, well, send him a tweet. He's on Twitter. Just holler at him on Twitter. He's usually responsive. But there's probably some kind of tweet about it already.
I'm sure.
Knowing his audience.
Yeah, because it's fairly new. Maybe like a month.
Okay, so you said something interesting, and this is the advice that I give people a lot too. And when I hear a terrible drum mix, it's usually just because the sounds aren't good. And you said, people don't want to hear that, or people don't like hearing that, because people want a magic bullet to transform a bad drum mix into a good drum mix. Right now, you teach mixing, you teach drum programming, you teach composition. Here's something that you struggle with. You struggle with teaching sound selection. Yeah, it's hard.
I think everybody does.
Well,
that's the hardest thing, bro. I was gonna say that. I was gonna cut you off, but your question is still going in that direction, because I think why people get so mad, or not that they get mad, but it's just not what they want to hear, is because it's not a magic bullet. It's not like, it's something that you have to be trained in over the years, and it's something that is also subjective, because not everybody is going to think one sound is good. Not everybody is going to think the same sound is good, is what I'm saying. Same sample. Everybody's going to have a different opinion. You're going to choose one kick. Another producer is going to choose another kick, snares, claps, etc. So it's super subjective, which is why it's hard to teach. And it takes a long time to train your ear. Another reason why they don't like that answer, because it takes a long time to train. And what I try to tell people, and I try to teach sound selection, is study, really, really hone in and really study songs that you like, that you listen to on a daily basis. Don't just listen to them, break them down, try to reverse engineer them. Why did that producer choose that kick, that snare? Figure out why, really dive into it and try to figure out why they used that drum kit or that kick or that hi-hat, that 808. What about that beat? What about those melodies made them go in that direction of those samples?
Sorry about that. Some people think having a dog is demanding, and I have a cat, and she's just making a ton of noise. I have to keep muting myself.
Oh, it's all good.
So I had to open the door for her. So let's jump right into the FL Studio engineering rabbit hole. So you record, you track, you engineer, and you vocal produce in FL Studio, right? Everything?
Yeah, everything. Now, yeah. I forgot what year it was, but once FL started getting a little bit better with the actual tracking side of things, I just left Cubase completely. What I was doing for a long time was recording in Cubase, and then mixing everything in FL because I was so used to the workflow, and I can get really clean mixes in FL Studio with just bringing in the stems. Especially if I made the beat, I would just bring the stems into my beat session. But yeah, now for the last maybe 5-6 years or so, 7 years, strictly FL Studio, recording, tracking, mixing, mastering.
Someone asked earlier, and I'm sorry that I don't remember their name. They asked if you could add on any one feature, any recording feature to FL, what would it be?
I think they just added it, honestly. It was one of my biggest like question marks as far as why they never did it. But now they've done it where when you, just like Pro Tools or Cubase, you can record in a track that's in the playlist and it will lock it into that, and it'll also coincide with the mixer track. So now everything can line up and lock in accordingly. Whereas what you put before in the playlist, you could just hit record, and honestly, it would almost seem like it would kind of just throw that audio clip anywhere in the playlist. Now it has a specific area that it's going to record to, and it has the arm and I believe like the mute and solo buttons within that little block inside the playlist. So they added just recently, a few weeks ago, a ton of recording features. And that was like the main one. That was something that I've been wanting for the last 15 years that every other recording DAW had, that FL just never did.
Okay.
And now the workflow is on another level. Yeah.
So Johnson is saying comping, but can't you comp in FL?
Yeah, you can comp easily. Yeah. I mean, that's just a matter of recording multiple takes, choosing the best parts.
But it's easy to just slide one from another track, right? Or
yeah,
I don't use
you can
FL,
just like record underneath. You could also loop record, and when you loop record, it's gonna mute the previous take, and then you can kind of just keep taking recording takes and then pull them down, and then just slice and dice and comp the best parts.
Yeah, because Ableton, I don't think Ableton presented itself initially as a recording DAW. It was really music production and live, but they always had those same kind of transport controls, didn't they?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I think so too. Okay, well, okay. Shout out to F. She's sitting in her bed making sounds. I think she just wants to be on the live stream.
She's yelling.
Why is there so much resistance to the FL Studio recording and engineering movement?
Yeah, I don't know. You got me. I think
because there's a lot, right? Like I've heard rumors even that FL Studio adds noise or certain sounds to.
They're crazy. They're all crazy.
Like their wave processing is different. The signal processing is different.
It's all yeah. I always knew that was false. But if you want to reference somebody that really went into it, go. And I don't know where exactly you'd find it, but I know I've seen the video multiple times from Decap, where he literally goes in and he goes into the science of things. See, I'm not that good or smart with this stuff, but Decap he's up there with that. And he is a beast, and he explained it so well. So if anybody has any questions about the engines sounding different between DAWs, go watch and look up that video from Decap, because he explains it so perfectly. And it's the one thing that you might hear different is the fact that FL Studio adds a limiter as a default into the mixer. So it's getting limited, whereas an Ableton or a Logic, they're not adding a limiter on your master track as default. But what you can do is you can go into FL Studio settings and make a new default without the limiter. And then every mix is going to be the same as anybody else's DAW. So it's really, that's what it comes down to. But as far as the engine goes, it's not a thing.
That makes sense, because I've always perceived FL Studio producers as having way louder beats. But I think also that's because just like that the AW is set up with a whole bunch of limiters and saturators and you know, just stock plugins to make everything as loud as possible. So if it's there,
and I think that in FL Studio, there's so many different ways to gain. Yeah, there's all these different ways to turn things up. The same thing. So within the channel rack, you can turn that volume knob up. Then you can go into the sampler of that sound, and there's another volume knob, another gain in there that you could turn up. And then once it gets to the mixer, you can put something else on it, a soft clipper or a limiter. So there's all these different ways to make things louder or be perceived as louder in FL.
Yeah. Because I saw a video of yours where you were creating a harmony with FL, and it looks like they have a stock plugin that's basically like Melodyne.
Yeah, Newtone, probably one of the most underrated plugins that FL has. It's essentially Melodyne, and I want to say that it's been around just as long as Melodyne, if not longer, because it's been in FL Studio for as long as I can remember. I don't know how long Melodyne's been around for, but I think a long time. And it's essentially that with all the settings. So I mean, if you have FL, unless you really are used to Melodyne, there's no need to go out and grab it, because Newtone is up there with it. It's at that level. And I've created harmonies from scratch with artists that maybe really couldn't sing those harmonies, or it was kind of a post-production type of thing where it was more cool that it sounded fake, creating harmonies from scratch. But yeah, I tune all my vocals. If somebody wants like a manual tune and wants that organic feel, I'll go straight to Newtone and tune their vocals. I'll even do it even if they want the auto tune and maybe their notes are far off and it's making the auto tune jump all over the place. I'll go in and manually tune it with Newtone before it hits auto tune.
And Newtone is just native to FL.
It's native, yeah.
That's crazy.
You might need one of the higher packages. I have like the producer bundle, like the highest one. But I think, when they limit you plugins. So it might be like one of the next steps up.
Okay. Here's what I find interesting about you. So you make tons of content, free content. It's hard for me to pin down what your revenue model is just by looking at your branding. With other producers, I know what it is. They're selling beats, they're selling courses, they're on a tour, there's something. I don't ever feel like you're selling anything. I'm going to ask you a very direct question. How do you make money in the music business? What's at the center of your revenue model? I can
answer it. There's a bunch of different ways, but the majority of it right now, it comes from sponsored content. But like you said, you don't feel like I'm selling anything. And that's my biggest goal. That's my biggest, most important thing that I've always had in my head, and a part of my business model is even if I'm selling something, it needs to, the piece of content that is selling this thing, whatever the product is, somebody else's plugin, sample pack, whatever it is, the video still needs to help. And do I have the occasional post where it's just like, hey, go grab this or download this for free or whatever? Yeah, I might have that. But my goal is always, every single day, to post something, whether I'm selling, whether I'm trying to get some email leads or whatever it is, to give back, so that way people never feel like they're just being taken advantage of and being sold to constantly. I don't like that. I don't like being on the other end of that, and I don't want to be on this end of it doing it to somebody else, because I know how that feels, and I just don't like it. And that's not why I got into this. It's not why I got into teaching on social media. I didn't say, oh, I'm going to do this because I know I'm going to be able to get sponsored content, Do you
remember what your first piece of sponsored content was, or what that offer was like?
Damn, I really don't. I wish I could right now, but one of the first ones was probably, oh man, I don't know. It could have been Slate Digital or Cymatics at the very, very beginning. Those were like the first companies that started reaching out. I would never reach out either, because I learned the hard way years ago, trying to reach out to just other producers or artists to work with just through social media. That doesn't work, especially when you have really nothing to gain, when they have nothing to gain off of you. So I didn't reach out to anybody until I started getting reached out to, where I was at a point where I knew maybe, hey, some people might want this type of video and they just really don't know about me yet. So I can maybe now put it in front of them and see if that would work.
So for you, it was a lot of, I guess, what they call paying it forward, putting out a lot of content that was helpful, and then allowing all of that to come back to you in the form of companies offering money for these kind of partnership deals, and producers wanting to, because you've collaborated with a lot of other producers too. For example, I think you collaborated with Curtis King on pretty big projects, which I think was a whole course with
Curtis we King? Did a course. Yeah, we did a course together in like right at the beginning of the pandemic, pretty much like in the middle of it, which was kind of scary too, because we had planned this whole thing for so long. And again, I just met him through social media. We connected and we were just chopping it up here and there. And we did a couple of collabs where we would drop some free content and just collab on the free content with no real end goals in mind, just kind of just collaborating and working together. We just really connected and vibed. And we put out that course. It was like an FL Studio advanced course. And that was my first ever production course that I've ever released. And I knew that I was getting towards that because of the content that I was creating. I knew that I wanted to get into the course lane. And it was cool that somebody like Curtis King just kind of helped me and basically like held my hand and showed me how to do it. Cause he had been doing that for a while. He had been releasing that type of content and products for a while. And it was something that my audience really wanted from me too. They were asking for things like that.
I'm guessing it did well given the timing, right?
It did do well. We had initially because the pandemic like really hit hard and people were really freaking out at that time, we drastically dropped the price. We were going to do it. And we were like, we got to put this out because we just put so much work. And I feel if we sit on it, it's just, so if it flops, it flops. I just want it to be out there. And, we did this and we put the work into it. Let's really drop the price because we know how people are hurting right now. And if people can afford it, they can afford it and they can grab it. Great. If not, it's just, it'll be there. This is one that we didn't like close down or anything like that. And we just kind of left it up and running. But yeah, it did pretty well. I mean, for me, I had never put anything out like that. I hadn't even sold any of my own products yet at that point. That was probably the first thing that I sold.
So someone's asking about an agreement with Superstar O. Did you have a partnership with him?
Was it? I guess it was some sort of agreement with Superstar O. Free tutorial for fun. I think if there might be referring to the subscription plan that he has. Is that what they're talking about?
I think so. They mentioned that earlier.
Oh. Yeah. So yeah, he hit me up and was just like, "Hey man, I'm doing this project, this like big subscription thing, and I want to see if you want to contribute a video. Maybe you do like contribute a video once a month or something like that." So yeah, we had an agreement. Yeah.
So what's your advice then? Because a lot of producers want to network, they want to collab. And you see it all the time where, a producer who just started out, who maybe hasn't built their value in the production space yet, is looking to collaborate with a Curtis King or a Larry O or a TM88 or, Superstar O, whoever. But all of these producers that they want to collaborate with have been doing it for longer. They have huge followings. They have a lot of credibility because they're just, good people and they've provided a lot of value. What's your advice to producers who want to start networking? How do they come to the table and with something that allows them to even start that conversation?
I mean, I think just to be like straight up, you have to have something that you can provide and bring to the table as well. It can't be one-sided. So if you're going and you want to work with a bigger producer, what's the reason you want to work with that bigger producer? 9 times out of 10, it's because they want to gain some of their fans, some of their audience in some way, shape, or form. So if you can bring that to the table as well, where you've grinded it out for years and you've put in the work to give that free value back, and you've gained an audience or just value in general, like not necessarily like free value, but like just value in general, and you've put good vibes out there and you show up. And what I mean by show up is taking the time to leave a genuine comment, because we're in the social media world. These things mean a lot, right? Sharing somebody's content for no reason at all, being genuine about things, not gatekeeping. If you have like somewhat of an audience and you feel like, man, what did he do for me? I'm not going to share his stuff. That's the mentality. Just people notice those things, and being genuine and just like, I really like this piece of content this person put up. I'm going to share it with my audience and just show my appreciation for that, and just kind of showing up in that sense in a live stream, showing up, spending time, chilling in live streams. I see the same people that are in this live stream right now. I've seen them all the time. Like that's great. It's recognition. It's branding, you know? And that's going to lead to something in one way, shape, or form. In some way, shape, or form, it's going to lead to something good. It's going to lead to a collab. It's going to lead to a relationship that builds. And I'm not necessarily saying that you have to have a huge audience and a huge number of followers, but just being genuine, being cool, showing up, networking, sharing. It's all that stuff. It's all providing value. It's a lot of different things all piled into one.